Well, then Washington Commanders head coaching search just got a little bit more complicated. The favorite, at least from the outside, Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator from the Detroit Lions, is heading back to Detroit. And if the Commanders wanted an offensive coach, Bobby Slowick is going back to Houston on a new deal to remain their offensive coordinator. This was supposed to be different. New ownership group, the vibes in Washington, they've got a top 3 pick and go get a quarterback. This was the time. David Harrison from Locked On Commanders, who joins me now. What happened, and how does this affect what happens next?
I mean, look, there's some reports that say that Ben Johnson either, knew he wasn't going to get the money that he wanted, so just pull out before he gets denied and turned down and all that stuff. Or some people want to believe that he's truly that loyal or dedicated to Dan Campbell or the process or how close they are to winning. Whatever it is, Ben Johnson made the decision that's best for him and his family. And personally, Peter, and I'm having this conversation on Locked On Commanders Wednesday. I'm not going to vilify him. I'm not going to necessarily crown him a hero either. I'm going to applaud the man for making the best decision for him and his family. That's at the end of the day. That's all he has to do. That's what he did. So now the Washington Commanders move on. You mentioned Bobby Slowick. That certainly is a punch to the gut for those who are dead set on getting an offensive head coaching candidate because, all the rest of the candidates are defensive. But Baltimore Ravens defensive coordinator Mike Macdonald, Peter, has been my number one target from Jump Street. You know what I mean? And I don't really go into offenses versus defensive head coaches. I know some people do, and that's fine. I just look for the guy that I think is the best leader of men. And just watching the Lions, watching the Ravens, I'm not saying it's a wide margin, but I just had Mike Macdonald at the top of my list personally. I think he's got some good coaches that he can pluck from to come be his defensive coordinator to help him run his system. Honestly, one of the other ripple effects is Houston getting their quarterback coach back because I'm like, well, that's maybe the guy that if we do get a defensive coach who's going to run his own system, that's the offensive coordinator that maybe you go pick. Hank Fraley from the Detroit Lions, he's my other kind of guy, but he's pretty loyal to Ben Johnson. Like he was expected to be Ben's OC, so I don't know if he's interested at all in leaving Detroit. So the candidates of potential offensive coordinators is much more shallow than the candidates of potential defensive coordinators, which is the only reason I was starting to lean towards getting that Ben Johnson, Bobby Slowick type, because I think you get a better defense coordinator out there. But yeah, Peter, I mean, this is how it rolls. And sometimes it pays to be patient. Sometimes it doesn't pay to be patient. We'll see what Washington ends up with and ultimately how it turns out, because that's going to be the real verdict here is 3 years later. That's when we're going to decide if this was a good decision or not.
What strikes me, David, is this does seem like a good job right now. We don't know how ownership is going to be. We think they're probably going to be better than Daniel Snyder to work with, but we don't know yet, right? But they have the chance to go get a really good, a potential franchise caliber quarterback. They've got cap space. They've got some young talent on this team. This was supposed to be the page turning off season. And there is a value in having that offensive coach in-house with Drake May or Jaden Daniels or whoever they decide to use with that second pick. It seems like a setback to me. So how can they turn this into a positive?
I think no matter what, as long as you're bringing in kind of one of these forward-thinking minds, typically associated with younger head coaches who are getting their first run at it, or even you look like a Raheem Morris, who it's not his first run, but there's been such a gap and so much learning since his first run that you kind of look at him as kind of a fresh new head coach as well. As long as you get one of those guys, so Mike Macdonald, Anthony Weaver, Aaron Glenn, someone like that, I think the fan base is going to be able to find reasons to get behind him. And ultimately, when we cover this thing, we're going to talk about what this coach is supposed to bring to move this thing forward versus, well, I mean, some people might focus on who they wanted instead. That's going to be their prerogative. But that's what I'm going to focus on is what does this move signal that we're going to get or can we expect? But I think the only one that's really going to turn maybe a little bit of excitement on its head would be Dan Quinn. And that's unfortunate for Coach Quinn because talking to some people in Atlanta who covered him during his time with the Falcons, he really is highly revered. People really loved him around the building, still talk highly about him in Atlanta, but he's just considered this older retread coach. And that term has become just as toxic as game manager has for quarterbacks. Yeah. So really, I think if the Commanders fan base, like if Dan Quinn is the hire, well, it's going to be a little bit harder to sell people on that idea, but that's going to be the decision they make. And again, 3 years from now will really dictate whether or not it's viewed as a great turn of events or if it's viewed as a terrible one. But I think any of these other coaching candidates, they all have supporters. They all have people who like the idea. So again, it's just about finding what it is that's going to be brought to the organization that's new and fresh and cohesive, because that's really what the message is here.
I can't let you go without asking you about the elephant in the room. What about Bill Belichick?
He's not coming. He's not coming. He's never, I mean, as far as I understand, and my friends on the beat and people who are more plugged into the team than I am on the beat, even, it was never even a thing. And I think, the idea that Bill Belichick probably wants as much control as he had in New England and those types of things. And Josh Harris made it very clear. This is going to be a committee type of effort.
Stay up to date all year on the Washington Commanders by subscribing to Locked On Sports today and Locked On Commanders on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube.